a year's worth of wait, the first 3 episodes of Invincible Season 4 have finally dropped, and from the looks of things, it seems like the Viltrumite War is upon us. The Invincible comics are so lore-rich that there's not a single slow moment we see in the adaptation. Now, the first 3 seasons of this show have been very faithful to the source material, but it looks like Robert Kirkman has taken a slightly bolder approach with Season 4 because it's not only darker and gorier, it also has a lot of changes from the OG comics. So, without wasting another second, let's discuss the top 12 comic book versus show differences in the first 3 episodes of Invincible Season 4.
I didn't forget, Mother.
We never get a young Nolan flashback in the comic book. Now, after breaking out of the high-security Viltrumite prison, Omni-Man bears the entire history of the Viltrumite Empire to Alan the Alien, alongside mentioning how his race is on the verge of extinction with only 50 pure-blooded Viltrumites left alive. We spend most of Episode 2 exploring Nolan's backstory on Viltrum before he was sent out to the galaxy, and it reveals why there are so few of the villains left, as somebody shot a bioweapon at their planet. It starts with a young Nolan dismissing his students before he's suddenly attacked by 2 Viltrumites who turn out to be his parents. During the attack, they reveal it's his day of adulthood. Nolan is then taken down by his mother, but his father stops the fight and asks him to go to the barracks for his first assignment. As Nolan receives his Viltrumite uniform and joins the others who have been beaten ahead of joining the guard, some of Nolan's peers start expelling blood from every orifice. Soon, the alarms go off as thousands of Viltrumites start falling and dying, including the general. We then see billions die of the Scourge virus. Nolan too gets infected, but he surprisingly survives, unlike his mother, who dies in the bed next to him. He then gets sent to help dispose of bodies in space, and while throwing out thousands of Viltrumites, Nolan notices his father's corpse, and sadly throws his body off the ship as well. Now, the comic book certainly recollects the history of the Viltrumite Empire, but we don't exactly get to see Omni-Man's character get so tenderly humanized as they did in the show. In fact, we never meet his parents or learn anything about how he was treated by them in the book, so this was definitely a great addition to the show.
I will never work for you again.
We can just leave.
Mark's emotional turmoil is much more enhanced in the show. So, Invincible Season 4 kicks off with Mark soullessly dispatching villains and threats around the world while feeling like his work is never done. The constant fights leave little room for his personal life, and while he and Eve remain a solid couple, we see his relationship with his brother Oliver severely suffer. Oliver even angrily tells his older brother how there's always one more, which gets to the heart of the issue, because really, if there's always another fight, what's the point in helping? It certainly doesn't help that the public perception of Invincible is at an all-time low. Moreover, Mark still feels incredible guilt over the alternate Marks that destroyed most of the globe during the Invincible War. In fact, even when they get clients for Invincible Inc., Mark feels uneasy taking money after everything that's happened and gets Eve to donate everything they earn. Mark was sad about what had happened in the comics as well, but we don't see him guilt-tripping as hard as he does in the show.
You were not kidding.
Telia does not join Alan and Nolan's secret mission in the book. After Alan takes Nolan to his apartment in Telescria, their encounter with Telia goes the same way as it does in the comic, but the show expands on her role as she joins them as they visit Thaddeus and even accompanies them on their secret mission to collect weapons against the Viltrumites. In fact, she also takes control of the ship they were sent on when the captain in charge repeatedly screws up. She very strategically saves both Alan and Nolan from the Rognars by temporarily freezing them back again, after the guy in charge ends up destroying the disk that deprived their planet of the sun, keeping them frozen for centuries. Of course, none of these details show up in the book, as we mostly see Telia's role here as Alan's partner and nothing more.
It'll be fine. I've slept in far worse places than...
Nolan's crashing on the couch scene is altered in the show. So, in the comics, while looking for a temporary place of his own on Telescria, Nolan takes up Alan's offer of crashing on his couch and stays there for almost 2 weeks. Of course, he never really gets to sleep a single night over the loud noises coming from Alan and Telia's bedroom. This scene is adapted in the show, but in a different context, as it all happens on the ship when Alan and Nolan were on a mission to collect the weapons that could bring down the Viltrumites. Funnily enough, Nolan later finds out in the show that there was an extra room available for him all this time, and he could have slept easily instead of spending nights with his ears covered, hearing Alan and Telia having Lucky for the man in charge of the ship, because blunders like these were met with Omni-Man's fist, but things are clearly different now that he's on a redemption arc.
Because I was the one who created it.
Nolan doesn't attack Thaddeus in the book. So, in the show, as Nolan and Thaddeus speak privately, it's revealed that the latter is indeed the great betrayer and the one who created the Scourge virus. But now, he's improvised to create an even more dangerous version of the virus that will destroy the remaining Viltrumites who have developed any sort of immunity towards the old virus variant. Upon hearing this, Nolan threatens to kill Thaddeus, but resists when the dude makes a valid point, and while he again refuses to join the coalition, we see him leave to meet with Mark and acquire him as his final weapon against the Viltrumites. Naturally, the inevitable mid-credit scene delivers a morsel of what's to come as Conquest returns to Viltrum and bows in front of Thrag's throne. He even offers to die as punishment for not killing Mark and actually welcomes death. Unfortunately for Conquest, Thrag didn't want to reward him with death because he still had a lot of work to do. None of this happens in the book, and even though Nolan doesn't outright deny to fight against his own kind, we do see him trying very hard to not be a direct participant in the war.
So, Mr. Wilkins, Eve tells me you work in the furniture business.
Eve's father doesn't talk to Mark about her virginity in the show. So, in the show, Mark eats Eve's parents for dinner a bit earlier than he does in the comic book. Even if Eve's father makes some passive-aggressive jabs at them, he talks to Mark about Eve's toughness and also reminds him that the only times she nearly died were because of Mark. Inside, Eve again had to listen to her mother rant about how Mark may not be the life partner she believes he is. Now, the book's version of this event is kind of weird, as Eve's father calls Mark a good man for ignoring the fact that she wasn't a virgin and accepting her regardless of that. He mentions that he had no clue Eve was hiding Rex inside her room when they were dating and would personally never accept a woman who had been with someone else. Honestly, for a father to make a comment like this about his daughter is diabolical, so maybe it's cool they didn't include that part of the exchange in the show. Eve finds out about her pregnancy under very different circumstances in the show. So the loss of Eve's powers in the show is portrayed in the same way as the comic book, except for the shuffling of a few scenes here and there. However, in the comic, when Eve finds out about her pregnancy, Mark tries to get her out of the washroom before his mom notices her. At this point, Omni-Man had already prepared to take Mark to fight the Viltrumite War, and Eve kept quiet about this news in order to make sure Mark could go and do his duty without any extra baggage weighing him down. But in the show, Omni-Man is yet to ask his son to help him out in the Viltrumite War, which makes the news of the pregnancy all the more intense and uncertain, especially because Eve can now choose to break the news to Mark directly instead of keeping it to herself. This will surely affect them both, but for now, we can be sure that it would have a major impact on Eve's mental health and abilities. Plus, it's definitely going to complicate things for the Invincible family. Robot going down the sewers during the Sequid invasion, against Brit's orders, is exclusive to the show. As you know, during the Sequid's invasion, Robot chooses not to follow Brit's orders and goes into the sewers to make sure all hosts are freed from the parasites. However, Robot gets taken out after saving someone, but wakes up before he can be taken by the creatures. He then saves 2 more people before shooting himself with a transport dart to avoid being taken. The same thing happens in the book, but the only difference is that Robert doesn't get schooled by Captain Brit at the end of the mission for not following direct orders.
I'm sorry.
The context of Invincible killing Russ Livingston is slightly altered in the show. In the show, when Mark reaches the final Sequid-infested human, he thinks they cannot stop the hive mind before it breaks out of containment. So, when the protective dome is only minutes away from giving out and letting the entire world crawl with Sequids, Invincible ends up killing the human attached to the Sequid mere seconds before Bulletproof arrives with a disruptor. Each one of the Guardians supported his decision to kill Russ Livingston because the risk was too high, but Robot, on the other hand, stood against it. However, in the book, Mark had no such time-sensitive situation and rather acted out of impulse, as by then, he had staunchly begun to believe in the concept of absolute solutions for villains who keep creating chaos. Monster Girl doesn't come to Robot's rescue in the book. So after having a hectic day at the Sequid invasion and fighting off these parasites in the sewers, Robot takes a hot shower and throws up one of those pink Sequids from his mouth. The parasite almost got to him until he screamed, and Monster Girl showed up to beat the Sequid to a pulp. The same thing happens in the comic book, but without Monster Girl showing up to save Robot, as he takes care of it all on his own.
Hero, you do not mess with my family!
The Titan subplot is exclusive to the show. So, during the Flaxen invasion, Oliver takes up a job for Invincible Inc. as Mark remains busy fighting the Flaxens. Turns out, it's another job for the Titan who's worried as Mr. Liu sent Metalhead after his family. The dragon sadly overpowers Oliver, leading him to hide, and Mark arrives a bit too late to get hold of the villains who escape. Having said that, he does end up beating the Titan to a pulp, even though all the man wanted was to save his family from Liu's rogue threats. None of these extra scenes exist in the comics, but we're not really complaining, because this makes the show seem that much more dense in terms of lore. You actually understand how different Invincible has been acting, as he has no control over his rage, and is just randomly making decisions to the point of insanity. Unfortunately, that brings us to the very end of this video. What do you guys think of the first 3 episodes of Season 4? Are you as stoked on them as we are? We'd love to hear about your favorite moments in the comment section down below, and if you enjoyed this content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe if you'd like to see more of this sort of thing. We'll be back soon with more Invincible lore videos, but until next time, thanks for watching, stay safe out there, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.